The best Souls-like games are typically difficult, prioritize boss encounters, and feature weighty combat that incorporates a degree of strategy. While games such as Lords of the Fallen wear their Dark Souls influence on their sleeves, others are a bit more subtle in their comparisons. There are quite a few games like Dark Souls on PS Plus, so today, let's look at the 10 best. First off, we have Bloodborne. From Software's Bloodborne is the best Souls-like game on PS Plus Extra and Premium. A gothic masterpiece set in the nightmare-inducing Yharnam, this PS4 exclusive is a masterclass in atmosphere, environmental design, music, and gameplay. Even post-Elden Ring, an argument could be made that From Software peaked with Bloodborne, reaching a high that precious few developers ever get to achieve. Utilizing a far more aggressive battle system than the Souls-like games, Bloodborne does not allow players a single restful moment. When playing this game, every instance is spent on the edge as a new terrifying beast lurks around every corner, waiting to brutally demolish the hunter. Next up, we have Demon's Souls. Dark Souls and Elden Ring might have ingrained the Souls-like subgenre into the public consciousness, but 2009's Demon's Souls got the ball rolling. Bluepoint's PS5 remake revitalizes this medium-changing game for a modern audience, greatly fine-tuning the visuals and combat while preserving the things that made the original version so memorable. A fresh coat of paint aside, 2020's Demon's Souls incorporates plenty of minor tweaks and quality-of-life adjustments that improve some shortcomings of the PS3 version. Next up, we have Hollow Knight: The Voidheart Edition. Team Cherry's Hollow Knight was one of the most popular indie games of the 2010s, and time has not dulled any of the project's shine. This 2D Metroidvania is set in Hollow Nest, a deceptively massive underground kingdom that is filled with beauty and nightmares. Cast as the knight, players must traverse this strange world, battling enemies and defeating bosses along the way. Similar to Dark Souls, Hollow Knight does not hold the player's hand in any significant manner. Encouraging exploration and backtracking, the game fills its world with lore drops and NPCs that deliver side quests. Hollow Knight is not only one of the best PS Plus Souls-like games, but also one of the greatest titles on the service in general. Next up, we have Dead Cells. Dead Cells is a 2D Metroidvania with roguelike elements in the sense that death sends the player back to the start. As the prisoner, players must traverse a dangerous island in order to kill its king, a process that entails defeating plenty of bosses along the way. During a run, the prisoner picks up new weapons, items, and upgrades, all of which, outside of a select few, are lost upon death. Due to its procedurally generated levels, Dead Cells constantly shakes things up, so no two playthroughs are the exact same. Next up, we have Nioh. Team Ninja's Nioh takes the Dark Souls formula and throws a few dozen or so mechanics on top of it, featuring 3 stances, a plethora of weapon types, and an expansive world filled with secrets. Nioh's similarities to From Software's franchise are immediately apparent, however the game does set itself apart quite well. The Japanese setting makes for a pleasant change of pace, especially since it is inspired by the Sengoku period. Also, Souls players who love collecting loot will find that Nioh does not hold back in dishing out goodies. In fact, it might give away too many drops. After that, we have Blasphemous. Blasphemous is a 2D Metroidvania that undeniably uses From Software's property as inspiration. Set in Custodia, this indie game envisions a grim kingdom filled with decrepit NPCs, haunting architecture, and religious iconography. It is not quite as desolate of a world as the regions found in the Dark Souls franchise, but Custodia is certainly heading in that direction. Blasphemous's hard-hitting combat is relatively straightforward, and it is elevated by fantastic animation that makes even the most basic moves feel special. This game consists of almost nothing but combat, but it at least is satisfying to play. After that, we have The Surge 2. Both the Surge games are available on PS Plus Premium and Extra, and together they should provide more than 50 hours of Souls-like gameplay. While the first entry has its strengths, the sequel improves on nearly every aspect of its predecessor. The combat is smooth and satisfying, especially since players have the option to target specific limbs of enemies. The Surge 2 is for anyone who has always wanted a sci-fi take on the Dark Souls formula, and the game does it very well. After that, we have Mortal Shell. Mortal Shell wears its Dark Souls influences on its sleeve, although the game does introduce a couple of fresh ideas. As tends to be the case with this subgenre, the core gameplay loop revolves around exploring a dark fantasy world filled with enemies that pack a punch and respawn whenever the player dies. While a bit more linear than most of From Software's projects, Mortal Shell's level design is cut from the same cloth. Next up, we have Eldest Souls. Eldest Souls does not hide its appreciation for From Software's genre-defining Souls series, but it is also not afraid to try and establish a distinct identity. Played from an isometric viewpoint, the indie game tells a simple story about humanity's revolt against the gods and the latter's counterattack that pushes the former to the brink of annihilation. Eldest Souls is a boss rush game, so the campaign centers solely around a collection of enemies that must be defeated. This is a notable change from the typical Souls-like, since exploration is not really a part of this package. And finally, we have Kenna Bridge of Spirits. Kenna Bridge of Spirits is an admirable indie project that could easily pass for a AAA release. Embert Lab created a beautiful and immersive fantasy world that just demands to be explored, even if the campaign itself is fairly linear. Cast as the eponymous spirit guide, players must use their skills to put the deceased to rest and also fight back corruption as it spreads across the mountain. Along with a small pool of abilities, Kenna is armed with a staff that can also be used as a bow. Melee actions are reasonably satisfying to execute, and they are completed well by Kenna's ranged and spiritual abilities. When not engaging in battles to the death, the game shifts its focus to puzzles, exploration, and light platforming. None of these elements are particularly original, but they are generally well executed. So those were our 10 best Souls-likes on PS Plus Premium and PS Plus Extra. What are some of your favorites? Let us know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.